1992, an entire Amish family of 7 disappeared from their farm in Pennsylvania, leaving only a note behind stating they were visiting relatives for the weekend. However, they never returned. A decade later, during a remembrance service, the community was sorting through old items when they stumbled upon a detail that had been overlooked, an unsettling clue that would finally uncover the mystery of what truly happened. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floorboards of Levi Lapp's home in New Holland, Pennsylvania. It was a day marked not by joy, but by remembrance. A full decade had passed since Levi's brother Aaron, his sister-in-law Miriam, and their 5 children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, and little Daisy, vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a simple note. Levi rearranged the chairs in his living room, which had been replaced by rows of simple wooden seats for today's service. His home had been transformed for the occasion long before dawn. Where his comfortable sofa usually rested, the chairs now faced the front of the room. The coffee table had been moved to the barn, making space for the gathering that would soon fill the room. The service began at 8 a.m., with members of their Old Order Amish community filing in quietly, men dressed in black suits and wide-brimmed hats, women in their prayer coverings and dark dresses. For 2 hours, they prayed, sang hymns in Pennsylvania Dutch, and shared memories of the Lapp family. Minister Yodar spoke thoughtfully about faith during times of hardship and accepting God's will, even when understanding seemed out of reach. By 10 a.m., the formal service concluded. Most of the congregation had left, returning to their farms and daily tasks. A smaller circle remained, close family, dear friends, and a few elders who had known Aaron since childhood. Levi looked around the now diminished group. His cousins, Samuel and Rebecca, sat together, Samuel's beard graying with the years. Miriam's closest friend, Mary Stoltzfus, dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Old Joseph King, whose farm bordered Aaron's abandoned property, stared solemnly at his folded hands. "Shall we?" Levi asked softly, gesturing toward the kitchen table that had been moved to the center. The group gathered around, forming a tight circle. On the table lay an assortment of precious artifacts, photographs, personal belongings, and at the center, safely protected by a clear plastic sleeve, the note that had sparked so many questions. Levi carefully picked up the note. Even after all these years, he had memorized every word. Written in Aaron's careful hand, it read, "Gone for the weekend, visiting family for church matters. Will return Monday. Don't worry about the animals. Arranged for neighbor boys to help." "Every year we read this," Mary said softly, "and every year I wonder what church matters could have taken them away so suddenly." "And which family?" Samuel added. "We are their family." The community had checked with every relative, every connection, Ohio, Indiana, even up to Ontario, but no one had seen them. Esther reached for a photograph, one taken just days before their disappearance. It showed the whole family on their front porch. Aaron stood tall and bearded in his straw hat, Miriam beside him holding baby Daisy, with the other children arranged by height, all smiling in their simple clothes. Behind them, laundry fluttered on the line. "Such beautiful children," she whispered. Eli would be 23 now, Michael, 21, Sarah, 19, Ruth, 14, and little Daisy. She'd be 10 now. Her voice cracked. Levi picked up a manila folder containing copies of the police reports. The official investigation had been brief, hindered by the community's reluctance to involve outside authorities. After a week of questioning neighbors and finding no signs of foul play, the case was classified as a voluntary disappearance, eventually growing cold. "We did what we thought best," Joseph King said, almost as though reading Levi's thoughts. "We are not a people who run to the English police with our troubles. We believed they would return." "But they didn't," Rebecca said quietly. "And now we gather each year, wondering if we should have done more. Daniel Zuck, another community member, reached for a photo from the police file. He studied it intently, furrowing his brow. It was the same porch photo Esther had been holding, but this one was the official police copy, slightly larger and clearer. "Levi," Daniel said slowly, "your brother's family? They were planning to leave that morning for the weekend, right?" "Yes, that's what the note said," Levi replied, confused. "Then why?" Daniel asked, turning the photograph toward the group and pointing at the laundry line visible in the background. "Look here. Fresh laundry hanging on the line. Notice how the clothes are still dark with moisture at the bottom? This was taken in the morning, just as you said." The group leaned in, studying the photograph with growing interest. "So why would Miriam leave laundry out on the morning they were supposed to leave for the weekend?" Samuel asked. "The clothes would be ruined by rain, eaten by bugs, or faded by the sun. No good Amish housewife would leave washing out for 3 days." Mary gasped softly as her eyes fixed on the photograph. "Is that a vest? It looks too bright." Levi squinted at the photograph, his heart suddenly racing. Among the usual dark hues of Amish clothing, blues and blacks, there was a flash of something fluorescent yellow-green. His pulse quickened as he realized what he was looking at. "That's a police vest," he murmured, his voice sharp with disbelief. "Police?" Esther asked, her tone equally stunned. Levi nodded slowly, the name coming back to him. "Officer Brenner. He was close with Aaron. He helped our community a lot. Fixed fences, assisted with barn raisings when he was off duty. A good English man who respected our ways." Joseph King, sitting nearby, gave a solemn nod. Always polite. Never tried to push us to modernize. "But why would his vest be in Miriam's washing?" Levi asked, still staring at the photo. The group leaned in, scrutinizing the image with renewed focus. The bright yellow vest stood out against the dull colors of the background. The word "police" was faintly visible, etched into the fabric. "I don't remember him ever getting it back," Levi said, his brow furrowing in thought. After Aaron disappeared and the investigation ended, Officer Brenner still came around sometimes to check on us, especially Mother. "But I don't recall him asking about a vest. My Ripka, may she rest in peace," Levi continued, referring to his late wife, who had passed 3 years ago. She packed away many of Aaron and Miriam's things after it became clear they weren't coming back. Maybe the vest is still with their belongings. Esther sat down, placing the photograph on the table with trembling hands. "Maybe we should speak to Officer Brenner about this. It may mean nothing, but after 10 years, any small clue could help us understand." Levi shook his head gently. "Mother, what could he do now? It's been a decade. The English police put the case aside long ago. We chose not to pursue it further, to accept God's will in this matter, but we never found peace with it." Mary interjected softly. "We say we accept it, but we gather each year because we can't let go. Maybe God's will includes us finally seeking answers." Levi stood up with determination. "I'll find the vest. If nothing else, I should return it to Officer Brenner. It's only right, and when I do, I'll mention this about the laundry. See what he says." The group nodded in quiet agreement, their expressions reflecting a shared resolve. They spent another half-hour going through the remaining photographs and mementos, Aaron's favorite hymn book, Miriam's quilting thimble, the children's drawings, and a corn-husk doll that had belonged to Sarah. Each item was treated with reverence, passed hand to hand, accompanied by a memory or a prayer. As noon approached, the gathering began to break up. Each family member and friend embraced Levi and Esther, murmuring comforting words that had been repeated so many times they felt almost like a ritual. "We'll see you at church on Sunday," Samuel said as he adjusted his black hat. "Thank you for hosting this year," Rebecca added. "It means so much to remember them here, in a home, not just the meeting house." "It was Mother's idea," Levi replied, glancing at Esther. "She thought maybe being here, where Aaron spent so much time, might bring us closer to understanding." One by one, the buggies rolled away down the gravel driveway until only Levi and his mother remained. Esther began to gather the photographs and papers, her movements careful and deliberate. "I'll help you put the furniture back," she offered. "No, Mother, rest. I'll take you home and handle this later," Levi said, his voice soft but firm. He went to the kitchen drawer and found the familiar weight of 2 brass keys on a simple ring, one for Aaron's house, the other for the abandoned farmhouse Aaron had owned on a separate piece of land. They felt cold in his hand, unused for months. They walked to his buggy, one of the few modern conveniences Levi allowed himself, a car for his furniture-making business. Levi helped his mother into the car, his own heart heavy with the weight of another year passed without answers. As they drove the short distance to her small cottage on the family property, Levi couldn't shake the image of that police vest hanging among Miriam's washing, a bright, jarring detail from what should have been an ordinary morning a decade ago. After dropping his mother at her house, Levi decided to go to Aaron's house immediately. It only took him 10 minutes along the rural roads, but he had been avoiding this place for months. The sight of the empty property always stirred up difficult emotions. As he pulled into the overgrown driveway, he noticed how the maple tree Aaron had planted the year before his disappearance now towered over the porch, its branches scraping against the roof in places. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. Pale rectangles on the walls showed where pictures had once hung. Ripka had packed most of the valuable and personal items after the first year, when hope of the family's return had begun to fade. Levi started his search in the obvious places. The hallway closet yielded only mouse droppings and a few wire hangers. The storage room off the kitchen, where Miriam had kept her canning supplies, was empty except for dusty shelves. He climbed the narrow stairs, each step creaking under his weight. The door to the master bedroom stood ajar. The bed frame, stripped of its mattress years ago, sat in the middle of the room. But there, at the foot of the bed, sat a wooden chest. Levi knelt beside it, lifting the lid. The hinges groaned, but held. Inside, Ripka had carefully arranged items that must have seemed too personal to part with, belongings that had remained untouched for years. Levi's heart skipped a beat as he gently lifted the fluorescent police vest from the chest. The bright fabric stood in sharp contrast to the quiet, humble items surrounding it, a man's worn work shirt, still bearing the imprint of Aaron's shoulders, and a child's wooden toy horse, smoothed by years of play. The vest, though, was carefully washed and folded, as if it had been placed there deliberately, almost too carefully, as if Miriam had thought about it in her last moments. "Police!" The word was emblazoned in reflective letters across the back, and on the front, a small patch read P. Brenner in neat stitching. Levi stood still for a moment, holding the vest in his hands, as a deep realization settled in. This wasn't just an object. It was a piece of a puzzle that had eluded them for years. He reached for his cell phone, a necessary concession to business life, and scrolled to Officer Brenner's personal number. They had exchanged contact details years ago after Brenner had assisted with a minor vandalism case at Levi's furniture shop. Levi dialed the number, but it went to voicemail after 4 rings. Brenner's familiar voice asked him to leave a message. Levi hesitated, staring at the phone in his hand. Explaining this over a recorded message didn't feel right. Instead, he considered calling the police station directly, but the thought of navigating a phone tree, explaining himself to a dispatcher, and possibly being transferred multiple times felt like a daunting prospect. No, he decided. This was something to handle in person, face to face, as was their way. Tucking the vest under his arm, Levi descended the stairs and locked the house behind him. His car was waiting in the driveway, but something tugged at him. An old conversation with Aaron resurfaced in his mind. Years before the disappearance, Aaron had mentioned pressure from developers wanting to buy the land for some project. Levi, curious, circled around to the back of the house, his eyes scanning the land for any sign of change. The view from the back porch stretched across the same farmland that had been there for as long as Levi could remember. Whatever development had been planned had never materialized. The split-rail fences were still intact, and the grove of oak trees stood at the far edge of what had once been Aaron's property, unchanged after 10 long years. Levi made his way back to the car and placed the vest carefully on the passenger seat, making a mental note to check on the farmhouse. The properties couldn't remain abandoned forever. The New Holland police station was a modest brick building on the edge of town, its American flag snapping in the afternoon breeze. Levi parked carefully and walked through the glass doors with the fluorescent vest tucked under his arm. The scent of coffee and floor wax filled the air, and a young officer sat behind the reception desk. "Good afternoon," Levi greeted as he approached the desk. "I'm looking for Officer Paul Brenner. Is he available?" The desk officer, whose nameplate read Jenkins, glanced up from his computer screen. "Brenner? He's been out in the field since about noon. Can I help you with something or take a message?" Levi shifted the vest in his hands, feeling a weight in his chest. "It's a personal matter. I have something that belongs to him from a while ago." Jenkins shrugged. "Hard to say with field duty. Could be an hour, could be the end of his shift. I can take your info and have him call you." "No, thank you," Levi said, shaking his head. "I'll try again later. It's something I'd prefer to handle in person." "Suit yourself," Jenkins said, already turning back to his screen. "He's usually here mornings if you want to try tomorrow." Levi nodded and left the station, stepping back into his car. He sat for a moment, considering his options. The farmhouse still needed checking, and since he was already out this way, he could return to the station later or perhaps tomorrow morning. He decided to drive out to the farmhouse, taking the winding road that led through Amish farms. As he passed the Yoder property, something caught his attention. 2 men in dark uniforms standing by a black truck, and Jakob Yoder backing away from them, his hands raised defensively. Levi immediately pulled over and got out of his car. As he approached, he could hear raised voices. "Told you yesterday and the day before," Jakob said in his thick accent. "This land is not for sale. It has been in my family for generations." "Times change, Mr. Yoder," one of the uniformed men replied. His uniform was strange, dark blue or black, but without any department patches, badges, or identifying markings. "The offer we're making is more than generous. You could buy land elsewhere, better land." "There is no better land than what God has given us to tend," Jakob responded firmly. "Please leave my property." The second man stepped closer, his posture menacing. "You Amish think you can just sit on valuable real estate forever, contributing nothing to progress, to the economy?" Levi called out, "Is there a problem here?" His voice was calm but firm as he walked closer. All 3 men turned to face him. Jakob's face showed a mix of relief at seeing a familiar face. The 2 uniformed men exchanged uneasy glances. "No problem," the first man said smoothly, trying to regain composure. "Just a business discussion?" Levi stood firm, positioning himself beside Jakob as he faced the 2 men. "Doesn't look like Mr. Yoder is interested in your business," he said, his voice calm but assertive. "He's asked you to leave." The second man's jaw tightened, and he took a step closer. "And you are?" "A neighbor," Levi replied evenly, "and someone who's about to call the police if you don't respect this man's wishes to be left alone." He pulled out his cell phone, making sure the men could see it clearly. The 2 uniformed men exchanged a look, clearly weighing their options. The first man reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain business card, tossing it on the ground at Jakob's feet. "Think about our offer, Mr. Yoder," the first man said smoothly. "We'll be back." They turned and walked back to their truck, moving with deliberate slowness as if to show they weren't intimidated. Levy memorized the license plate as the truck pulled away, but it bore no company logos or identifying marks. "Thank you, Levi," Jakob said once the men were gone, bending down to pick up the business card. "They've been here every day this week, always the same, wanting to buy my land, getting more insistent each time." "What do they want it for?" Levi asked, his concern deepening. Jakob shrugged. "They speak of development, progress, making better use of the land, but they give no specifics." He paused, his face clouding over with worry. "You know, something like this happened before, about 10 years ago. Different men, but the same pressure, same vague talk of development. Then it stopped, suddenly." Levi felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm afternoon. 10 years ago, around the time my brother disappeared? "Yes," Jakob said slowly, as if finally making the connection. "Now that you mention it, a few months before Aaron had men visiting him too. I remember he was worried about it. Talked to the bishop." Jakob trailed off, unwilling to directly mention the disappearance. "These men," Levy pressed, "did they say what company they represent?" Jakob handed him the business card. It was plain white, with only a phone number and the words Land Development Associates in simple black text. No names, no address. "I'm actually on my way to speak with Officer Brenner about another matter," Levi said, feeling the weight of the situation settle in. "I'll mention this to him. He's always been a friend to our community. Maybe he can look into whether these men have the right to harass you like this." "I would appreciate that," Jakob said. "I doubt the English law can do much if they're just asking to buy. Still, it would be good for the police to know." Levi glanced down the road where the truck had disappeared. "Be careful, Jakob. Maybe make sure you're not alone when they come back. Have your sons or neighbors nearby?" "I will," Jakob replied, his voice full of gratitude. "Thank you again, Levi. God bless you." Levi nodded, troubled by the encounter. As he continued his drive toward Aaron's farmhouse, a feeling of unease settled over him. It was as if the past had stirred, old secrets struggling to emerge. The entrance to Aaron's property was marked by 2 weathered stone pillars that had stood for over a century. As Levi slowed to turn in, he noticed a police patrol car parked on the opposite side of the road, its engine idling. The driver's window was down, and through it, Levi could see a familiar figure in sunglasses. "Officer Brenner," Levi called out as he pulled over and parked. He crossed the quiet road to approach the car. Brenner removed his sunglasses, revealing tired eyes that crinkled with recognition. "Levi," Brenner greeted warmly. "Good to see you. How are you holding up?" "Hello, Officer Brenner. I'm well, thank you," Levi said, glancing around the empty road. "Are you stationed here today? Seems unusual for someone of your seniority to be on patrol duty." Brenner chuckled lightly. "Just keeping an eye on the area. Happened to be passing by and saw Aaron's old place." His expression grew more solemn. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years. I still think about that case sometimes." "That's kind of you to remember," Levi said, touched by the sentiment. "Actually, I was looking for you at the station earlier today. I have something to discuss with you about Aaron's case." Brenner's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh?" Levi nodded and walked back to his car, retrieving the police vest from the passenger seat. "I found something of yours at Aaron's house," he explained, holding it up. "This was in a chest with other belongings. I believe it's yours." Brenner took the vest, examining it with a puzzled expression. "A vest? I don't—" He turned it over and saw his name stitched on the patch. His face cleared. "Oh, yes, right. This is mine. Completely forgot about it after all these years." "How did it end up at my brother's house?" Levi asked, his curiosity piqued. Brenner handed the vest back through the window, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "It was that morning, the morning they left. I had stopped by to discuss something with Aaron, and Miriam, being the kind soul she was, invited me in for breakfast. Wouldn't take no for an answer. You know how she was. Levi nodded, remembering his sister-in-law's legendary hospitality. Well, clumsy me, Bernier continued. I managed to spill vegetable soup all over my vest. Miriam insisted on washing it for me, said it would stain if left. I protested, of course, but you didn't argue with Miriam Lapp when she decided to help you, Levi finished, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I never heard about this visit, Levi said slowly. May I ask what you were discussing with Aaron that morning? Something flickered across Brenner's face. Was it nervousness? Oh, it's been so long. I think it was something about neighborhood safety. There were some development plans in the area that had residents concerned. Development plans? Levi leaned in, feeling a sense of urgency rise in his chest. Aaron did mention something about that to me once. Private developers wanting to build a road through the back of his property. That's right, Brenner said, seeming to relax slightly. There was a company pushing hard to buy up land for some project. The community was worried, and the police department worked with local officials to put the project on hold. I was probably just checking in with Aaron about any safety concerns, making sure no one was pressuring him unduly. Levi thought of Jakob Yodar's frightened face from just minutes ago. Speaking of pressure, he said, his voice tight. I just came from Jakob Yodar's farm. 2 men in dark uniforms were there, trying to force him to sell his land. They've been harassing him all week. Brenner's expression tightened, his gaze hardening. Dark uniforms, he repeated. The property for years and the offer, while low, was the best he had received in a long time. He didn't want to lose this opportunity, especially with the looming costs of maintaining the farmhouse. I can follow you, but I need to take a few things from here first, Levi said, his voice careful. I'll meet you in town shortly. The man nodded, flashing another practiced smile. Of course, I'll be waiting. Levi watched the man walk back to his sedan, and as he pulled out of the driveway, a strange sense of unease settled over him. His attention kept drifting back to the map the man had shown him, the mysterious marking in the mountains, hidden beneath the fold of the paper. Something about it didn't sit right, but he couldn't quite put his finger on why. After a few moments, Levi shook his head, focusing back on the task at hand. He finished tidying up the kitchen, his mind racing. As he locked up the house, the weight of the decision to sell pressed down on him. The property was valuable, but the community had its suspicions about outsiders. Whoever this man was, Levi couldn't help but wonder what he wasn't saying. He followed the man's car into town, the winding road taking him past Amish farms, the fields golden in the fading sunlight. When they arrived at a nondescript office building on the outskirts of New Holland, Levi parked and followed the man inside. The office was sparse, with a cold, professional air to it. The man, whose name was William Foster, as indicated by his business card, sat behind a polished desk and gestured for Levi to take a seat. He set the business card down in front of him and immediately got to work on the paperwork. I appreciate your willingness to meet me today, Levi, Foster said, tapping a pen against the desk. I'm looking forward to moving forward with this sale. The sooner we finalize, the better for everyone. Levi nodded, but something about Foster's eagerness bothered him. He glanced at the paperwork on the desk, trying to focus, but his mind kept wandering back to the strange symbols on the map. As he signed the contract, a small voice in the back of his mind urged him to slow down. He had been so desperate to make the sale, to find some resolution, that he hadn't stopped to consider the bigger picture. Once the papers were signed and the deal was made official, Foster stood, extending his hand with a smile. It's been a pleasure doing business with you, Levi. I'll take care of everything from here. Levi shook his hand, but a feeling of doubt lingered in his chest. As he left the office and walked back to his car, he couldn't shake the nagging sense that something larger was at play, something tied to the land, to the mysterious developers, and to the secrets buried in Aaron's disappearance. He drove back to the farmhouse, the weight of the deal settling heavily on him. The property was sold, but there was still so much more to uncover. He had returned the police vest to Brenner, and now it seemed like there were more pieces to the puzzle. The men who had harassed Jakob Yoder, the strange business dealings, and the cryptic markings on the map, all of it pointed to something bigger than a simple land sale. Levi pulled into the farmhouse driveway once more, casting a final glance at the property he had known his whole life. As the evening shadows lengthened, he realized that this chapter was closing, but the mystery, the questions, the unsettled truths were far from over. The sight of the construction site sent a chill down Levi's spine. The building in progress, though designed to resemble an Amish meeting house, was far too grandiose for any true Amish community. Its steep, decorative roofs and elaborate details were nothing like the simple, functional structures Levi had known his entire life. It was, in every way, a tourist's idea of Amish architecture. Beautiful, yes, but also wrong in its excess. Levi moved quietly, staying close to the tree line as he approached the site. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of everything. The model he'd seen back at the office, the way the land had been reimagined, replaced by commercial buildings, housing developments, and shopping centers. His mother's house, Aaron's property, and Jakob Yoder's farm, each of them displaced in favor of some larger development plan. It was all coming together, but the picture it painted was far from clear. He ducked behind a tree as Officer Brenner's patrol car sat parked near the construction site, the officer himself nowhere in sight. Levi crept closer, using the cover of the trees to stay hidden. The heavy construction equipment was motionless for the moment, its massive machines looming like silent giants. As he drew closer to the site, he noticed a figure standing near the construction fence. A man, tall and lean, with the same black suit and dark, unmarked uniform as the men who had harassed Jakob Yoder. Levi's heart beat faster. These were the same people, the same pressure tactics, the same vague promises of development. The coincidence was too great to ignore. He crouched low behind a stack of lumber, watching as the man walked back and forth, barking orders at the construction crew who appeared to be waiting for further instructions. It was then that Levi spotted Officer Brenner, emerging from behind the construction site's far corner. Brenner looked around carefully, as if ensuring no one was watching him. Levi's breath caught in his throat. What was Brenner doing here? This wasn't just a casual visit to check on some development. He was involved in something deeper, something that didn't sit right. Levi didn't move, choosing to stay hidden in the shadows, his gaze fixed on the scene unfolding in front of him. Brenner spoke briefly with the man in the dark uniform, his voice low and urgent. The conversation was too far away for Levi to catch the words, but the body language between the two men told a story of its own. Brenner was tense, his usual calm demeanor gone, replaced by something more guarded. The man in the uniform handed Brenner a piece of paper, which Brenner took without hesitation, slipping it into his jacket pocket. Levi's instincts told him to stay put, to keep observing, but the longer he watched, the more he realized that whatever was happening here was part of a much larger, more dangerous game. A game that involved not just land, but the very heart of the Amish community. The property was being sold, sure, but at what cost? What exactly was going to be built here, and why was Brenner involved? As the two men parted ways, Levi slipped out of his hiding spot, careful not to make a sound. He had to leave before he was noticed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of uncovering something that could change everything. He quietly made his way back to the road, keeping his head low as he retraced his steps to his car. Once inside, Levi started the engine, the wheels spinning in his mind faster than the car on the road. Whatever was going on, it wasn't just about land. It was about control, and Levi knew that if he didn't act soon, there might be no Amish community left to protect. Levi stood firm, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. I saw everything, Brenner. I saw the bones, my brother's family, maybe others. You helped murder them. Brenner's face twisted with disbelief, his eyes flicking to the police cars now surrounding the site. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a desperate attempt to regain control. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice faltering slightly. "Officers, this man is making wild accusations." But the officers were no longer listening to Brenner. They moved quickly, circling around the site, searching every corner. Some began to comb through the dirt where the developers had been digging earlier, while others moved toward the men who had tried to flee. The developers, realizing their escape route was blocked, turned to face Levi. The man who had spoken earlier, the one who had grinned about the stored bodies, now had a panicked look in his eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat, his voice shaking. "You're just a farmer. What do you know about real business?" "I know enough to see what's happening here," Levi said, his tone cold and unwavering. "And I know that you'll never get away with it." The second developer, looking for an out, tried to duck past Levi's car, but the police quickly intercepted him. They had enough evidence now: the bones, the admissions, the connection to Brenner. Everything was coming to light. Levi's thoughts raced back to his brother's disappearance, to Miriam, to the children, his family buried under the guise of progress, treated as obstacles to be erased for the sake of development. It made his stomach churn, but there was no turning back now. He watched as Brenner was taken into custody, his face a mask of fear and disbelief. The officers didn't hesitate to arrest him as more evidence piled up, including the discovery of the bones. As the chaos unfolded around him, Levi felt the weight of years of questions, confusion, and silence lifting piece by piece. The second developer, who had been shouting protests just moments earlier, now fell silent, realizing his fate was sealed. Police began to escort him and the other men away, while a detective approached Levi. "Thank you for your bravery, Mr. Lapp," the detective said, his voice respectful but urgent. "We'll get this sorted, but I need you to stay available for questioning. You've just helped bring down a major operation." Levi nodded, his mind still reeling, the adrenaline of the moment fading into a heavy, oppressive silence. It wasn't over. This was just the beginning. As the sun dipped below the mountain, casting long shadows over the construction site, Levi couldn't help but feel that some part of his family had been avenged today. The truth had finally come to light, buried bones and all, but he knew there would be more to uncover. There always was, and as he watched the last of the police cars drive away, he made a silent vow. No matter what came next, he would continue the fight for his family, for the community, for those whose stories had been erased for far too long. Our children helped us in times of need, and all the while, he was betraying us. We trusted him more than anyone else. Detective Chen gave him a sympathetic look, but said nothing, allowing Levi a moment to gather his thoughts. The weight of the revelation hit him harder than he expected. The man who had been a fixture of their community, who had built a reputation on helping the Amish, had used that very trust to aid in the destruction of his own family. Levi continued, his voice low but firm. "I remember Aaron talking about the pressure, but we never took it seriously. We thought it was just a matter of them wanting land, but we never thought it would go this far." Detective Chen nodded, her expression hardening. This goes deeper than just land acquisition. These developers, Davidson included, had a much bigger plan in mind. And Officer Brenner was at the center of it. He was feeding them information about the community's vulnerabilities, about families who might be persuaded to leave, and those who might resist. He was part of the strategy, not just as an informant, but as someone actively working to weaken the community's defenses. Levi leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. But why? Why destroy the people he had known his whole life? Why go to such extremes? Chen shook her head slightly, a mixture of sympathy and frustration in her eyes. "It's about power, Mr. Lapp. These developers wanted to turn this whole area into a commercial hub, and they were willing to do whatever it took to push the Amish out of their land. Brenner's involvement was not just a matter of money. It was about helping these people expand their influence, creating a marketable, sanitized version of the Amish heritage to be sold to tourists. To do that, they needed to clear the land, and clearing the land meant getting rid of anyone who stood in their way. Levi's mind kept replaying the images from the construction site, the human remains, the developer's callous words, the realization that his brother's family had been buried in secret. The idea of his family's bodies being desecrated for the sake of profit made him sick to his core. "I can't believe it," Levi whispered. "All those years we wondered what happened, and now we know. My family. They were murdered for this?" Chen's voice softened. "We'll make sure this doesn't go unpunished. The truth is coming out now, and the people responsible will face justice." Levi nodded slowly, though it didn't bring him any peace. The truth had come, but it was bitter, and it felt too late for the closure he had longed for. "What happens now?" "We'll continue the investigation," Detective Chen replied. "We'll follow the leads from Davidson's journal, trace every connection, and make sure those responsible are held accountable. We have Brenner in custody, and now we have a clearer picture of the network he was part of. There are more people to arrest, and we will follow the evidence wherever it leads us." Levi felt a small flicker of hope, but it was faint, dimmed by the enormity of the betrayal and the losses that could never be undone. "I just want to make sure they're remembered," he said quietly. "My family, I need them to be remembered for more than just the way they were taken." Detective Chen gave him a firm nod. "We'll make sure their story is told, Mr. Lapp. You have my word." As Levi stood to leave, he glanced once more at the police station. The people responsible for his family's death were being taken into custody, but the scars of the past would never fully heal. It would take time, perhaps a lifetime, but Levi knew he couldn't rest until every truth was uncovered, every person responsible was held to account, and his family's memory was finally honored. As he walked out of the station, he felt the weight of the years lift, if only just a little. His family had been lost, but they had not been forgotten, and now, for the first time in 10 years, Levi had a path forward, one that would ensure the memory of Aaron, Miriam, and the children would live on, not just in the shadow of their disappearance, but in the light of justice. Levi sat silently, his mind a whirl of emotions, but for once, he felt an undeniable weight lift from his chest. The truth, harsh and terrible, had been revealed. His family had not abandoned them. They hadn't chosen to leave. They had been silenced, stolen from the world far too soon, but now they were found. The answers that had eluded them for 10 long years were now within their grasp. His mother's shaking hand in his was the only comfort in the sterile, unfeeling room. The years of wondering, of questioning, of grappling with the silence, those years were over. They knew now. The family was gone, taken by violence, but they hadn't vanished into thin air. They were victims of greed, of betrayal, and though their bodies had been hidden beneath the earth, their memories, their lives, had never truly been lost. Esther's quiet voice broke through his thoughts, soft, but filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to come from the very earth itself. "It's them," she whispered, her hand gently touching the photograph, the smile of her children, her husband, frozen in time. "My son, my grandchildren." Levi stood beside her, his eyes lingering on the fragments of what once was, a shoe, a bit of fabric, a child's remains, pieces of a life now gone, but forever etched in the pain of those who had loved them. "We'll find them a proper resting place," Levi murmured, his voice barely audible, yet firm in its conviction. "In the cemetery, with the rest of our people. They'll come home." Esther nodded, her tear-streaked face a testament to the years of grief. She placed the photograph back into her bag, her movements slow, deliberate. It was as if saying goodbye to the image, placing it gently away, was the final step in a painful but necessary journey. The past had claimed their family, but now they could begin to heal. Detective Chen had stepped back, giving them space to mourn in peace, but Levi knew that their journey was far from over. They had answers now, but they had also uncovered a web of corruption, violence, and greed that spanned far beyond their family's tragedy. Breener, the developers, and all those who had plotted the downfall of the Amish community, they would answer for their actions. The justice that had been denied for so long would come, and Levi would make sure of it. As he helped his mother to her feet, his mind was already turning to the next steps. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. He would not let his family's death be in vain. They would be remembered, not as victims, but as symbols of the strength and unity of the Amish community. And no matter how long it took, Levi would make sure that the memory of his family was preserved for generations to come. With a final, lingering look at the remains of his family, Levi walked out of the sterile room, ready to continue the fight for truth, justice, and the honor of the people who had once lived so peacefully until their peace had been stolen from them.